Welcome. My name is Kate Harmon, and I'm the Director of Cross-Campus Engagement for the Lundquist Center for Entrepreneurship. And today on our Getting Ahead series, I'm excited to have with us Joe Hawes. Joe is the CEO of the Hawes Group, a portfolio of professional services companies located up in Vancouver, Washington. So thank you for being with us today, Joe.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Let's start off talking a little bit about your career. I know that you have been pretty much working your whole life, even in high school. Share with us, what your background is and was during your college years at UO. What were you engaged in? What did you study? And take us up till today as you lead the Hawes Group.
Okay, that's quite a long story, but I started at the U of O in 1984 as a sophomore, went to University of Portland the year before that, and grew up in Eugene, South Eugene High School, Roosevelt Middle School, so local kid. My parents owned a collection agency, Professional Credit in Eugene, and I worked there when I was in high school. Doing the mail and filing and stuff like that. And then in college, I started a process service business, civil process service. And that's pretty much how I got myself through the U of O. So couldn't afford the private school more than my freshman year. And graduated from U of O. And then I worked for a couple of years for Ford Motor Credit. That was in the late 80s, and it was a little bit of a recession, not quite as bad as today, but they were looking for customer service people, and that involved calling people who had past due car loans and trying to get them current, or alternatively returning the vehicles. And I did that for a couple of years. Did it well. I was down in San Jose, California. It was an interesting time to be in San Jose because the place was just going crazy, and I thought I had a good job, but there was a lot of people around me were doing very well. Got a little homesick, moved back to Eugene. I started my MBA at Golden Gate University. Then I went to U of O, transferred over, and I had some problems with my undergraduate grades, and I was still younger, so they were concerned that I could handle the rigor of the night program at U of O. So I talked my way in as a conditional admit, and talked my way in as a conditional admit with Wendy Mitchell, who was the director at the time. And first term, I ended up with the statistics class and actually got a C out of that. That was my only C during the MBA program. I really enjoyed it. Really took to business from that. Randy Swangard taught small business administration, and I really liked those classes. They were very straightforward, showed how to do business plans and stuff. And a lot of the case studies that I did were for Professional Credit, which was the family collection business. And came up with ideas on how to grow that and everything while I was in college. That was from 1990 to 1994, and the four-year program was a good, solid education. And so, from there, I just worked at Professional Credit, formed a couple other businesses over the years, bought my parents out in 2000. The business had taken off. It went from about 300,000 when I started in 1990 up to 2.5 million by 2000, and then up over 40 million in the teens. So how did I do that? Just a lot of hard work. There's stories of companies that grow really fast, and I think that that's a decision people need to make. Do you want to do something that's a fast grow, or do you want to do it over time? I've always been one to try to maintain my level of equity. I think it's important to have to maintain that equity. And so from professional credit, I started a business called Health First Financial. That was a patient financing business. We sold that in 2018. So it went for like 17 years. Then it got really popular in the 2008, 2007 with the private equity community. And so all of a sudden we got all those competitors. I didn't realize it was a business. We ended up selling it in 2018 for a fair amount. And then I started a process service a couple of years later, and that was simply because I got a frustration with process servers and wanted something that was a quality process service, and I had experience there. I had got into buying accounts receivable portfolios of bad debt, and I did that for a number of years. I had a company called Hawes, which was the company we bought the debt through, and that was an interesting segue. That market overheated and prices went through the roof, and kind of just quit doing it. I've had some real estate investments. In Oregon, it's Hawes Investments. In Washington, it's Hawes Ventures, and just, buy and sell real estate and collect rents. The KG Hawes is a business I started with some partners over in Coimbatore, India. Just ran into one of their leaders at, it's the firm's KG Group, and they're out of Coimbatore. And one of their leaders was over here living in Tigard, and I just ran into him, started talking, complaining about my mainframe computer system that I had for my business, and I hated it. It was like a Borg, we had the computer system, and then we had a bunch of systems running off it, and it just didn't work, and it was a recipe for trouble. I had 3 internal programmers that were continually working on that. So he talked me into building a system for Health First. That was 2012. Took about 9 months to build the system. That totally changed that company. And when I ended up selling it, the first thing they said is they weren't interested in the software. And then later they wanted to make sure that all the software was escrowed and that they could convert their system onto that system. And I think it really made that business, a lot more competitive. It just, we were, most of our transactions were, internet over the web versus a lot of our competitors who were running expensive billing statements and taking payments over the phone. And, it allowed us to do more of that omni-channel communication, collection, customer service stuff. And so that was a good experience. Then in 2014, we started AR Trail and the actual joint venture KG Hawes, which is 50% KG Group and 50% Hawes Group. And so that's been going for 6 years. We haven't made any money. We have some really nice products. Voice Trail is a call analytics program that analyzes phone calls and can tell if somebody's happy, sad, or whatever. Then there's AR Trail, which is the receivable management platform. We have a program called RoboDX that does electronic data interchange securely. It's a fascinating program. I wish I understood it. I could explain it to people. And then we have another imaging system we sell, and we do some RPA services along with infrastructure and network security. So that's KG Hawes. That's the newest business. And I hope that's a good start and answer.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, let's talk a little bit more about your growth strategy. I know from previous conversation we had talked about it, and you have a very interesting outlook on how you identify and think about growth and when you want to hit a new milestone. Can you share a little bit about that?
Well, my attitude towards growth has changed dramatically since I was, 23 years old. When I was 23 years old, it was, growth at any cost, figure out what you're going to do to get to the next level, to get, the next client to, all the way up to 2008. 2008 was a changing experience. I mean, I used to have brown hair, but, it took me a while to learn in 2008 what to do. And, I had to lay people off, like, first time ever. And I did what I could to not. We just moved into a new building, and revenue was dropping dramatically. And so, we pretty soon it was just need to maintain positive cash flow. So as soon as we figured that out, it was okay, and everybody pulled together. In terms of growth, I think what you're saying is unique form of growth is, I've kind of always stayed away from the seed fund, venture fund, other people's money type growth, and focused more on building a platform, getting to profitability, and then using bank or investor money that's a lot safer. It leads to slower growth, but I think the end results can be more positive. It's this KG Hawes business has been a real frustration for me, because we've been 6 years of negative cash flow, but we've done some really great things, and now we're starting to see the other side of it. So I'm not necessarily tempered for that type of investment. I'm used to doing an investment, getting a marginal return, and making money. But it's been a labor of love, I guess. But just continue to grow year over year. We've had a few years where we have slipped back. 2008. Not sure how this year is going to turn out with the pandemic, but we're trying to respond to that as well as possible.
Yeah, and let's, if you don't mind, talk a little bit about the current environment. You gave a great overview of what it was like during the Great Recession in 2008. I'm wondering if, in light of the current economic climate, do you see any opportunities? Is there any strategies? Are you thinking about trying to be innovative, that you see sort of flickers of light that you all might be able to leverage?
Well, I mean, times like these, I always try to consider that all of our competitors are in the same, position. I think that, during the 2008 recession, that was a great opportunity to, improve market share. I think, it depends how people are responding. We laid people off initially going into this, and cut back on a lot of our expenses. Obviously, stopping travel, that's a huge part of our budget for our sales team. So, there was a lot of cost savers associated with it, but, keeping people on, keeping them busy, making sure that our clients haven't forgotten us and our prospects haven't forgotten us. And that's all going well. This one it came on a lot quicker, and I have no idea where it's going to go or what's going to happen. I mean, it's the most, it could go any direction. So it's, that level of risk is really, not advisable to be making large investments in anything, just kind of sitting back, and hopefully it will, things will be better in a couple months.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit more about your ability to integrate technology into your companies. You're a big advocate for using technology through all of your companies. Can you share a little bit about how you've been able to use technology in your companies to gain market share, and how you think about technology in your business?
Well, I got introduced to Macintoshes back in junior in college at the computer lab. My parents were doing the books on a ledger when I started. I mean, literally payments would be on a ledger and you'd sum them up. And then they had a computer service where they would enter all that information and it would download their trust accounting and some of that. But they really didn't have a, electronic bookkeeping system. So I put like QuickBooks on my Mac, and that was our accounting system. And we actually were able to do payroll off it and things like that. A few years later, we used to have these things called reverse directories. Like you could look up the address to find out what phone number went with it, or vice versa. So if you're, in collections, you're trying to find people. So if you know their address, but you don't know the phone number, you get the reverse directory. And we had them for like, where's Southern Oregon? Where's Central Oregon? Who's got the Southwest Washington directory? So you go look for them, and then you look it up. And we did all that manually, and it wrote down. So one thing we did was we found this company that did these CD-ROMs with those books in them indexed, and put that on a PC and put two 8-port cards into the PC, and then networked them out to dummy terminals that we put on everybody's desk for finding phone numbers, looking up addresses and stuff. I mean, it used to cost like 20 cents if you called directory assistance. So, that was kind of an initial technological integration. We started to realize that our computer system was a legacy system back in 2000, and that I hired a number of I had 3 programmers that just worked full time on writing the external software, little queries, interfaces, stuff like that in the 2000s, till it got to the point where we'd written a whole payment system for interfacing with the Visa merchant system, and it was a mess. And so that was kind of one of the impetuses for us to get involved with KG Group. And so it's made a big difference. I guess now I'm kind of moving into more of the technology business and more away from the credit and collection business. So
that's great.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that you have all the Hawes companies have presidents that all report to you. So let's talk a little bit about your management style. What do you typically hear from your presidents, or how do you tend to manage them? And what kind of things do you have to do to insert yourself if needed into the individual companies that you oversee?
Well, I mean, business and management are 2 entirely different things. I'm pretty good at business and understanding a business and how, the market and all that, the finances. Management, I probably don't like it as much. I mean, I got my undergraduate secondary in management, but it's kind of, it's a lot of work. It's a discipline. I think I'm good with like 10 to 20 people, but once you get up like 100, it gets to be, there's complexities where you need an HR department. I mean, it used to be I just had like my assistant did the HR. We kind of handed off like, okay, we got an HR problem. Do you have a file on that person, or should we start one? And, now HR is a big formalized deal. With, you've got reviews and promotions, and I think there's people that are very good at that. They're very good at follow-ups. I try to follow up as well as I can, but I'm not, I have that with Scott Purcell, who's president of professional credit. He's just, he takes a note on something, it's going to get done, it gets done. He's a former accountant. And it's that's a good working relationship. I like projects, and I like to get involved in a project, and then I'm uninterested in the reports after I'm done with that project. a lot of times they'll still be sending me the reports on it, and I'll have to call them and say, just stop sending me those reports because I'm not really interested in this anymore. It's working. So
great. That's great. Uh, you are a great supporter of employing and promoting ducks in your organization. And so I'd like to see if you can share with us some of the stories about some of the ducks that you've hired and what they've gone on to do for your companies.
Well, I mean, I think that goes both ways. I mean, I've hired a lot of great ducks that have, really taken businesses and done well with them. Scott Purcell, who runs Professional Credit, he's got his accounting degree from Oregon State, though, but that's only 40 miles away. I mean, my biggest success in this area would be Kaylin Gates. She was the president of Health First Financial. She's now general counsel for Access One. I hired her. She went to law school, not business school, but she did the new venture competition, and I was one of the judges actually. And she ran the presentation, and really did a good job with that and stuff. And I actually ran into her later at the laundromat and asked her what she was doing, and she's graduating from law school and kind of looking for a job. And I'm like, well, we could use a lawyer or a third-year law student at Professional Credit, and gave her the name of who she should check with, and she followed up on it. And then I was having some issues that I'd interacted with her on a few things like licensing and stuff like that, and could tell she's just super smart. And so I had a consultant in, and we were trying to figure out how to get the business to work right, because as it grew, you started to have those issues, and I made the comment, I was like, when I was 23 years old, I could have run this business. And then I was like, wait a second, we got a 23-year-old lawyer over in the legal department, and she's interested in growing businesses and new venture type stuff. And so I brought her in and said, you're smart enough, we're going to make you chief operating officer. And she had a bunch of people that were twice her age reporting to her, and a lot of times that's when they eat the younger ones. But in this case, they really came together, and she got them to support her, and they all liked seeing her be successful. And I mean, clearly it was a great story. I have another guy who's Spencer Peck, who's running Titanium Legal Services for me. He's got an MBA. He'd worked for us as an analyst in our accounting area. Interestingly, his office was just kind of down from in the same area where mine was, in the administrative area in Springfield. And I hardly ever talked to him, but now I talk to him a lot, and he's doing a great job with Titanium. It's a, process service where he has put an app together where, with our friends in Coimbatore, so the app will tell you where the person, like if you serve somebody, you want to make sure you serve somebody, that you didn't just take and throw the papers in the bush or something. And it'll say geodesic or whatever, but it tells you where you were at the time, timestamps it. You can get a picture. So it's like, yeah, I was here serving them. See, here's a picture, here's a timestamp, and it files all the paperwork associated with service electronically. He built that. We bought a system from a guy who built a process service system, and then we redid it. And so now we have our own system, and the business has grown dramatically in the last 2 years. So, I mean, this project we started on 3 years ago. Revenue's gone from, under 100,000 a month to around 400,000 a month right now. So it's been a real success story. And he's looking at the whole Western United States. And then that gets into logistics of, how do you get people to work and serve papers and have them trained throughout the Western United States. And, it's kind of like an Uber of process serving concept. So it's really interesting, and he's run with it. I know that Kaylin has given him some consulting on that too along the way. A few other people, my top lawyer, she graduated from U of O, Hannah Horsfall, a few years ago. She does litigation. Harrison Schoberg, he kind of runs our analytics department. He was an economics graduate. Chelsea Trieb, she's a manager in our legal department, and she's been working full-time and going to the U of O. She's graduating this spring with a degree in, I don't know, used to call it decision science when I was a kid, but now it's like analytics or something. But she's super smart, 4-point, and she only works like 30 hours a week, but I think she works more than the people that work 40 hours a week. I talked to her earlier today, and she's, I got a class in 5 minutes. And it's like, okay, are you at home? No, I'm at the office. So she's going to do her class, and then she's going to get back to work. And then we've got her set up. She's going to do the executive MBA program here I think they start in fall. And she's younger, but had, I don't know, they're taking the experience with us and some other experience she had. And I just thought an executive MBA would be better for her since she has business experience. So that's kind of an exciting project. And then I got another guy, Andy Carlisle, who's he's a senior in finance, and he's also does real estate management for me in Springfield, and kind of keeps track of our properties. He's interested in getting into real estate, but U of O used to have a real estate finance program, but I don't think they do anymore. So we're trying to figure out how to accommodate that. But those are some of the people that I've worked with over the years. And
that's a great track record. What a great track record of hiring ducks that have gone on to succeed. Well done. Well, my final question to you is, as you kind of look back over your entire career, are there any sort of things that you would advise current students to think about as they're preparing maybe to launch their own career? Any kind of advice you have for students in terms of how to be successful?
I thought about that one. I didn't really plan out my path. Frankly, if I went back and actually worked really hard at things, I might have ended up at Harvard or someplace like that and have more of a, be in wealth management or something, and have a more normal career. But how do you get into bill collecting? Obviously, through my parents, and it's one of the things I would say is maybe when you're looking, if your goal's to do well financially, go into a business that other people don't want to do. I mean, plumbers get paid well because they climb under people's houses. I mean, I had an old soccer coach from high school who bought a small garbage company down in California, hauling trash. And, that's not a fun job, but he sold that to Waste Management for a few $1 million a couple years later. I'm not sure there was a lot of smarts involved in that business, but I mean, and the credit and collections, not real glamorous. Process serving, not super glamorous. Another thing that we have here is all these are, they're legacy businesses. Third-party debt collection, receivable management, process serving. Those businesses have been around for centuries. And, the thing is, they're not, for the most part, they haven't been, technology hasn't been applied to them. And, what I realized was when I started in the business, the rates in the collection business were way high. They were, 50%. type, you get 50% of whatever you collect because it was that hard and that much work. And now they're substantially less. But we were able to apply the technology of not having to look in a reverse directory physically, but you could, pull it up. Now we upload and download accounts to various data vendors and do data scrubs. And, maybe you hear a little bit about that, like, oh, they got so much information out there on me and stuff. But it makes the collection job a lot easier. Some of the technology that's been introduced by Spencer in the process service business. I mean, it was a business where, they would print tens of thousands of documents every month. Now it's all filed electronically with the court and you never see it and you don't need clerks to do it. And so the business becomes a lot more profitable. So if you can find a legacy business, like cabs and Uber, and find a way to make it, to apply technology to it, I think there's a lot of opportunities out there. Most generally, a couple things. Show up for work early. Like, you're supposed to be there at 8 o'clock. Make a point of being at work at 7:30. It really says something to your managers, and it makes a total difference. And it's only a half hour, and that, to me, that's a big one. So get to work early. Always finish projects. There's nothing people hate more than the guy who starts a project and then moves on to something else, or the gal who starts a project. And then you're like, did you get that done? And it's like, no, I got distracted, so now I'm doing this. But make a point to finish your projects. And one thing I always do is I try to work a little bit of overtime and not tell anybody. Like, just show that you did a great job on something, and not, oh, I didn't really put much time into it. It's just a little something I did. Like, no, you stayed up all night writing that little memo that was just perfect. And so, do a little bit of that. So just, get there early and put in a little bit of extra effort, and it'll make a big difference.
That's great advice. Thank you so much. Joe Hawes. Joe Hawes is the CEO of the Hawes Group. Thank you for joining us today, Joe.
Thank you, Kate. It's a pleasure.